Welcome to Money Matters with Greg, where we dive into the money conversations shaping your life. From investments to estate planning, insurance to taxes, we cover it all with a fresh perspective. Join Greg and his guests each week to get inspired and take control of your financial future. Let's get started. Securities and investment advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member FINRA SIPC.
All right, welcome to Money Matters with Greg. The show's about money and how it affects your life. We are here with Brett Lemmons here again. This is broadcast on WVLP 103.1 FM here locally in Valparaiso, Indiana, and then worldwide via this thing called the World Wide Web. So you can find us on, iHeartRadio, iTunes, certainly Apple, Spotify, anywhere you pod. We turn this into a podcast. And today we're talking about really just our overall financial literacy and really kind of starting out. Brett has a bunch of questions. He's got a bunch of things going on in his life that have been happening. And we wanted to be able to talk about that, kind of bring that to the audience. And I'm sure there are a lot of Gen Zers out there that have questions as they're running now out of college and also in college. And that's really what we wanted to kind of touch on today. So you can find us, obviously, the socials that we have anywhere, social media. You can find us at Farrall Wealth. You can also find us on the YouTube channel at Farrall Wealth as well, and sort of check us out there. This will be broadcast on the YouTube channel at a later date. Did want to just throw out a quick disclaimer. Obviously, the opinions voiced in this podcast are for podcast and radio show are for general information only and not intended for provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments are suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional in your life, tax attorneys, accountants, financial advisors, prior to making any decisions. And with that out of the way, Brett, I think we can get started and get going here.
Yeah.
Welcome. So glad to have you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me again. Good to see you as always. Kind of the thought for today is, so I got married last November, bought a house last April, got married.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So we kind of talk about in our industry, planning events, birth of a child, death, divorce, whatever it may be. Marriage is kind of, buying a house and marriage are two of the big planning events, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, I get back from my honeymoon and I have a big list of stuff that I want to tackle and start planning for us as a couple.
Yeah, so usually you have, I think the biggest thing I had when I got back from my honeymoon was my credit card bill.
Yeah. Yeah, that was number one in the budgeting.
Yeah.
But kind of want to go through and, what advice would you give to a 20-something-year-old who just got married, just bought a house? What should their checklist look like? Let's talk about that.
Sure. And I think it's, just go back and forth here too. Just wanted to be able to include your thoughts as well. Just, not just make this all about me. I've got suggestions for sure. I've got two twin girls who are 24 years old. We're right behind you in age. And then our son is 20 years old, so he's in college and certainly working his way through and looking to find out more about investing, putting money away, all these other things. So if it's not if it's not them, it's you and a number of others. We have 4 interns, right? So we just had a call with them. They're all in college, looking to put money away, looking to invest, and I think it's just smart to have these conversations and just sort of talk things out. We all talk about, or everyone in the industry talks about all the way to, the Orman days, Susie Orman basically saying, it's about emergency funding first. That's all well and good. And that's, easy to say. You need an emergency fund, typically 6 months of savings. in case you lose your job, you want to have that. But the problem is, you're just starting out. It's really tough to have 6 months of savings. I think that's one of the first things you want to kind of work towards is have that sleep at night money, and sort of figure those things out. I don't, we've talked in our industry about what your zero is. What is your zero? I mean, some people's zero is zero. Some people's negative. Unfortunately, they have debt and just, credit card bills and things like that. And then, we have a client that has $1 million as a zero, and that's what he wants. His dad had $1 million as a zero, and I know it sounds like an insurmountable amount of money, but basically he says, if I write a check for $1 million and it bounces, you're fired I'm my financial advisor. And hey, if I was in the business of judging, I'd be out of business. Who am I to say that, it's a zero. It is what it is, so you want to get your zero to 10,000, from 5,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 20,000, and basically know that that's always going to be my zero. I don't have to stress and just kind of put that money away. I think that's one of the first things you want to try to work towards. You blew all that out of water. You went right to buy a house. I mean, that's incredible. So how's that been going? Like, I asked you that question.
Good. So my kind of checklist is, my accounting background. I look at the balance sheet, right? So everything that drives the balance sheet, we're looking at in kind of our annual meeting as a couple, if you will. And basically with that is you got to drive a budget, right? So like you said, figure out what is your zero. All these other things that we're going to kind of get into and talk about are plugs for then, okay, what can you afford to put away every month or every paycheck?
Yeah.
And then how do you build that? And where is your comfort? What can you stomach at being your zero?
Yeah. Yeah. And also, your list. I mean, again, cable bill, right? Cell phone bill, those things that are important to you. Subscriptions, let's go with that first. I mean, do you have a Netflix account or not?
Yeah, well, we just got kicked off of my parents' Netflix.
Parents?
The budget's already got to be redone.
Oh, you nasty, evil Netflix, you. Yes. That was a eye-awakening experience for my 3 kids. Like, wait a minute, I got to pay for my own Netflix. Yeah. Evil, evil, evil. And that's happening with many subscriptions. YouTube TV just limits to 3 streamers now, and for the family. I mean, you pay for a family membership, and who has a family of 3?
Right.
Some do, obviously, but most people have more than 3 users in a family. But those are things that, like, can you afford? Can you afford a cell phone? What kind of cell phone are you going to afford? Are you on your parents' health insurance until you're 26 or not? Do you have a full-time job? Is it, you're on another plan? That's really, really important. But I think you're right. You basically, legal pad, pull out a legal pad, piece of paper, and start writing them down and add them up. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. It doesn't have to be, you can go to mint.coms and use those tools as much as you can, those apps that are out there for your budget. But you got to know your number, right?
Right.
As we say, what is my nut every single month that I've got to pay, and start there.
Right.
And then try to figure out what you can put away. And then, I mean, you got plans for a 401k if you're working for a company. Certainly putting money away for that long-term bucket. Do you want to kind of go through the buckets that we talk about? Maybe just go back and forth on those. I can start with the static bucket, which is, again, that's your zero, your zero bucket. If you lose your job tomorrow, you or your spouse or, early on, what is it going to take us to go, find another job? It costs money to get a job. I need 6 months of that number that I've already added up on that legal pad, that I know that it'll take me 6 months to get a new job. It might, hopefully it'll take less, but that's the worry, right? And then, sure.
What do you do with that number? Do you put it in a savings? Where does it sit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be cash like instruments. You can put it in a CD, but you need to be able to touch it. It has to be liquid.
Right.
I mean, if that's the last thing you want to do is stress about the fact that you can't touch them. So, you've got a savings and then it's 3 months, before you can touch it because it's in a CD and it's locked up. I would definitely have the majority of it be liquid, but ultimately all of it be touchable,
Mhm.
you know? And then basically your dynamic bucket, which is your 3 to 7 year kind of plan, that's also touchable. You kind of put that money away in investable assets. You put it for a little bit more long term, and then you have your dream bucket, which is your 7 to 10 year bucket, which is your home, your IRA, your 401k, any other real estate you own down the line. 7 years is a good number for most people. Well, I find that people can't think beyond 7.
Sure.
10 years, and they're like, that's forever. And it's not. But, those 3 buckets, static bucket, dynamic bucket, dream bucket. Just where, and then throughout your life, those things get put in those different buckets. You just sort of think of three buckets, to save with. And it's a hell of a start.
Definitely.
So, we wanted to talk about, so what's it like? I mean, so not to air anything out there for you out there in the World Wide Web, but, how has it been as far as adjusting, being recently married, sharing expenses and even debts and thoughts about all of that? How's that going?
It's been great. It really has. One thing that I'll brag on my wife is all the quote unquote hard conversations come easy. So we definitely can talk things out pretty well, and
Good.
it's good. So one of the first major decisions we had as a couple was, okay, we've been saving. We're engaged. We got to buy a house. And debt, you mentioned, do we pay off our student loans, or do we kind of bring that into the marriage and put more money towards the house? Just with the way the interest rates were and the math worked out, it worked out for us better to put more money towards the house and keep on paying our monthly payment. But they've been good. All of those are kind of, we break it down and look at the math, look at the numbers. And
So in that situation, you took the higher interest rate that you had to be able to pay more down on that than the student loans because they're at a lower rate, right?
Correct. Yep.
Which makes sense. Yeah, there you go. There's a nice little lesson for everybody out there. If you're going to have debt, pay down the most expensive one. So, you would pay down any credit card debts because those are 21, 23, 26, 33%, right?
Right.
So
Right.
makes a lot of sense, and that's the other lesson for anybody. Like, credit cards are really evil. They can just absolutely wreck a family's, balance sheet. And, there's like always that question about, well, do you need it or do you want it? Is it a need or a want? And credit cards are, I want it, and if you are disciplined enough to stay to a debit card, you're just spending whatever's in your bank account.
Right.
So with a credit card, that's just not the case, and that's why I call them evil, because there's just temptation. They're that little devil on your shoulders, whispering to you that you really, really need this when you really just want it.
Yeah.
You know,
If you are good enough to not listen to the devil, though, they can be useful as far as getting your cash back and rewards, and it's great tool to build credit. And
sure, but starting out, it's more evil than anything else. You're not gonna, yeah, sure, you get a little cash back, but hopefully you're not using them that often because you're just starting out.
Right.
Sure, there are rewards and things like that you can use them for, but you just got to be disciplined. That's the key. Pay them off every month if you are using them every month, and you've got the cash flow to be able to do that. Again, back to your balance sheet, your legal pad, simple, basic. Have you guys considered any sort of, like, one of the big questions is life insurance?
Yeah.
A lot of people, Gen Zs, they get sold life insurance early on. So yeah, have you had a conversation about life insurance?
Definitely. Real quick, to go back to the credit card thing, a plug
Oh, yeah.
for my college students. So when I graduated college and got a job, I had a very hard time getting a credit card because I had no credit.
Right.
I just have a bunch of student debt. Amazon, Bass Pro Shop, whatever, they'll give you a credit card. Go get one of those, start using it, and just use it for expenses that you know you have cash for.
Yeah,
So,
good point. There's also, our kids get in the mail a bunch of student cards through college,
right,
where they'll tag, like Chase will tag it, Capital One will tag it, and basically give you a student card. And so there's a low limit on it. Great way to start out, building your credit, trying to get, from basically, everyone in college has a 600 number in credit scores, and you want to have an 800 number. It's a great way to get that kind of built up. So really
yeah.
good.
To answer your question about life insurance, that's definitely a conversation. We've put it on the priority list a little bit down a ways. So we just bought the house last April, trying to get through the wedding. So 2025's resolution is life insurance. We believe if you have a house, both me and Amanda can't afford to live there, separately. So something happens to her, something happens to me, we want to be able to keep the house. We don't have kids yet, so it'll be a smaller policy. And we kind of joked about talking about some of the TikTok,
Yeah.
know,
Instagram reels
out there, Instagram, right?
Sure.
And to go into that, whole life insurance is not on the table for us right now. We're just
Right.
going to go with the term.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need. I mean, if you're going to be saving elsewhere, whole life insurance was really big in the 80s and the 90s because it was really one of the only investment vehicles. And it was expensive. Now,
Right.
much cheaper places to invest your money, and you don't necessarily need it. Now, permanent life insurance obviously is something you got to consider because you might not be insurable down the line. That's certainly something to think about. But for anybody in their 20s, it's a great gauge. You got a house, so who's going to pay off the house? You can have that in your head. You know what? Pay off the house. And if you got kids, get them through college. Like
Right.
making a dowry here for spouses, we're not setting up, millions of dollars for somebody to be offed or on Dateline tomorrow. But they do, you need help, and here's the thing that I always mention on both spouses, there should be something because, if you guys have a kid and something happens to your wife, you're going to have to work, to support the child. They're going to have to go to some sort of daycare. They're going to have to get driven to school. They're going to have to be picked up at school or stuff like that. That might, you might have to employ someone to be able to pay to, that comes with money. And any death benefit comes in as tax free. So yeah, term insurance of 10, 20 years, women's tables are much cheaper than men's.
Right.
So it's super cheap to get something on your wife, for sure. Something on you on both sides. But cheap.
Yeah, especially 25, 26, 27. You're even for the men still. It's cheap.
It's cheap. It is. And it's cheap for a reason. It's a term, it's only going to be 15, 20 years. But it gets you through a certain amount of time. I mean, if you recently have a baby, 20 years gets them through college for the most part. If something happens to you, and hopefully if you're on a 15-year mortgage, pays for the house too.
Yeah.
So, lesson there, cheap. No need to really just go, big. Add up what those costs are. So basically, like a house is, let's say, 200 grand, 250 grand. College is going to be another 750, down the line. As you extrapolate out 20 some years or whatever it is, it's going to be super expensive. So then $1 million term policy for 20 years, it's pretty cheap.
Right.
It's like dollars a month for a person your age.
Yeah.
So, and put it in the budget, right?
Exactly.
A lot of people have it through work too. So it's definitely something to consider. HR, have these conversations with your HR departments and say, what can I put in? And at least take something out. Even
Right.
50,000. Most businesses have $50,000 to $100,000 per employee, and some of them it's part of their benefit package. They don't even have to pay in for that. So it's something to consider as well. So super cheap. Yeah, big fan. Yeah, what about those TikTok, Instagram people that tell you to do all these things and make it so easy that, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm investing here and stuff like that. So,
Right.
and what do you guys, I mean, what's your generation think about all of that?
I mean, for me, watching them, it's a little bit of a different perspective.
Sure. Well, you're fully licensed and you have,
Right.
you have your licenses. They don't.
The whole life is always, the one that's interesting to me. Buy whole life insurance.
Right.
The remember the whole GameStop saga a couple of years ago. It seems
Sure.
like TikTok full of people that are trying to teach you how to trade options and iron condor this and everything else.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of stuff out there. What is good and what is bad. And,
Yeah. Just be careful as, with anybody, if it feels wrong, it is. Um,
or
that's
it feels good, too good to be true.
Yeah, exactly. So, just be careful out there and just, consider the source for sure. You can get some great information nowadays, just by being able to go to the right source. And just highly recommend. And, everyone knows those sources that are out there that are, you know, um, good, solid financial advice. You know, hopefully they listen to a podcast that they get and see a YouTube. So, and see what we're doing. Speaking of which, um, excited to have the show on WVLP FM 103.1. The show's Money Matters with Greg, talking with Greg Farrell, CEO and president of Farrall Wealth. It's a local wealth management firm local to Valparaiso, Indiana, with clients in 21 states. We're also talking to Brett Lemmons, who's part of Farrall Wealth, is also part of the Lachiak Accountancy Group. So he's definitely got a lot of the tax side in conversations with what he does and how he does it as a new advisor and now as a newly minted married guy here is overall and certainly learning the ropes. We're talking about financial literacy and just sort of what can the Gen Zers do in his generation to kind of like put some money away and save. So that's the station identification overall. And we're glad to have you. And thanks for being here. Brett, is there anything else you want to talk about here before we kind of wrap up?
State plan for someone young without kids. What my checklist was real quick. It was check our beneficiaries on our retirement accounts,
Yep.
and then living will, last will and testament, medical power of attorney, which I know we're going to talk about more next week. So I don't want to get too much into, but anything else as far as just estate planning for a young
Yeah,
person?
just realize, everyone needs to know, over the age of 18, you have a will. Everyone does in every state that they reside. It's mandated by the state. So if the state wants to decide where your stuff goes, which they will, they'd be happy to. All of your assets, whatever it might be, there's a default system that's just going to go to take care of that. If you want to change what somebody else is going to do with your money, I highly recommend you get a last will and testament and decipher where that stuff goes, especially if you have heirlooms, you have jewelry. Let's say your grandmother gave you a bracelet that's very important to you that you want your niece to have. If anything happens to you, you know what? It's got to be in a will. It's got to be written down. Can't be on a paper napkin. You can't tell your spouse. It doesn't work that way. It's got to be in the last will and testament. And you can get one super cheap. There's many facilities out there, LegalZoom.com. We have a trust and wills as well as available through us that can do simple wills. We're going to talk a lot about that next week. But for now, highly recommend you get a last will and testament. And then to your point on the medical power of attorney, like what the hell's that? That is who pays the electricity bill while you're in the hospital, incapacitated, and can't talk, and getting better. So you're improving, but somehow the lights got to stay on, right? So you need to have that person already announced, and then show that to the hospital. Say that you're able to speak on their behalf, sort of thing. And that comes in the form of a HIPAA authorization as well. So that's part of it. because once you're over 18, obviously the hospital can't disclose that you're there without that HIPAA, authorization. That's super cheap to get to. And then you mentioned already the living will, which is, well, what do I want done? What are my wishes if I'm on machines? Am I DNR? Do not resuscitate? Am I resuscitate until do everything you possibly can to keep me alive? And then decide, am I no machines? All these other things, that's all in a living will. So yeah, grown up stuff, right?
Definitely.
Any suggestions on that from your side? Is anybody starting out?
Just the check your beneficiaries one. So, when I first started working, didn't have a girlfriend, didn't have a wife, obviously, like I think I put my dad or somebody down as my beneficiary on my 401k.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that, go back and check it. You don't think to change it. And next thing you know, you got a great story.
Yeah, the story we use in our industry is, and this is, I don't know if it necessarily relates very well to your generation yet, because there's really, hopefully there's not a high amount of divorce, in your 20s. But this did happen to this gentleman that's sort of used in our industry. He was a steel worker in Buffalo. He was right out of high school. He tried college. It really didn't work for him. So he decided to work at a steel mill. Got a shift, started working in the steel mill, got a girlfriend. They got married, found the love of his life at the age of 21. They got married super quick. And then it didn't work out with the marriage. He was still working at the mill. And they got divorced at like 23, 24. Got remarried, found the second love of his life at the age of 30. Worked all the way through the mill, all the way until his late 70s or early 70s, and he retired, had a pension, and then he died in his 80s and never changed the pension from the first wife to the second. So the first wife that he hadn't seen in 50 years got his pension. And the second wife, who lived with him for over 50 years, got zero. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Check your beneficiaries, make sure that they're right, make sure that they're what you want them to be or who you want them to be, and then review them, right? I mean, every year, got a New Year's resolution to do something to improve yourself, check your beneficiaries.
Right.
Never hurts. You'd be surprised. Those things just get forgotten. And that's the last thing you want to do is have your money go somewhere, certainly to your ex-wife or your ex-husband.
Right.
That's probably not a good thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely not.
So yeah, I highly recommend that. That's really good stuff. We're going to have more of this too on this show, and we're going to be talking a lot about this. It's great to have Brett, and it really just is a breath of fresh air. Thanks for being here, and obviously being a part of this. Talk to your Gen Zers. I'm certainly talking to my, in essence, my son and daughters here and their friends. Any way we can help out, however. And if you have any questions on anything you'd like to have us discuss on the show, my email is greg@farrallwealth.com. It's like Will Ferrell, but he spells it wrong. It's Farrall, so you can email me there. And then also Brett, it's brett.lemmons@lpl.com.
2 T's in Brett and 2 M's in Lemmons.
There you go. So, and email us any questions you have or whatever, and certainly, happy to help. Okay. So, with that, I think we'd probably close it down. Want to thank WVLP 103.1 FM for the chance for being here today. And also anywhere you pod on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you can find us as well. So thanks for being a part of it today. And we look forward to going on to the next one. Next week, we're going to talk about estate planning, kind of getting into the weeds. We're not lawyers and don't play ones on TV, but we're dangerous, good enough to be dangerous. And we'll probably certainly just sort of give our suggestions on what to do with that. But anything else, Brett?
I think that's it. Hit it.
All good. Okay. Everybody have a great week. We'll catch you next week. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Goodbye.
See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to Money Matters with Greg. We hope you gained some valuable insights today. Remember, your financial journey is personal, but you don't have to go it alone. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe and share. Until next time. Here's to making your money work for you. Securities and investment advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member FINRA SIPC.